What's up, guys? Welcome to the Walk On Warrior podcast, where we prepare young student athletes for next level success. I am your host, Coach Z, and listen, I'm super excited for our guest today. Finally, we got a young student athlete that's went through the process currently as we are speaking, and next year he's going to be embarking on that journey of becoming a student athlete at the next level. And well, without further ado, I'll let him tell his story. Danyel Khan, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so just kind of jumping right into it. I feel like individually, I kind of had a unique story to kind of get to where I am from a football standpoint. So going into freshman year, I was more of a basketball player, but like as soon as I stepped foot on campus, I realized basketball was like super dependent on height. And I quickly learned about football. That was the opposite. It was way more dependent on work ethic and how hard you're going to work. And if there's a spot for everyone on the team, speed, height, weight, no matter what it is. So a friend told me to come out to football, and I just did it on a whim. And I was a two-sport athlete to start, football and basketball, with basketball still being my priority. Freshman year came along, and ironically, I go to a very small school in Newport Coast where football is not really a huge thing. Still has a good following and stuff, but definitely more focused in other sports. But anyway, smaller team, and our starting senior receiver, who was a star at the time, star of the team, actually dislocated his elbow. This was also during COVID year. So the season was actually in March instead of the usual fall season. So I had a little more time to prepare for the season, which was very nice looking back on it. And he dislocated his elbow the first game, and they looked down the sideline and they decided to put me in as a freshman in my third game on varsity. And I was like, obviously a little scared, but first catch I ever had was a slant taken to the house for a touchdown. And like from there, like, I mean, I feel like I credit that moment to a lot of like what happened, because obviously in football, a ton of luck goes into it with play time, but I just happened to be on the right side of the ball on that one. Player getting hurt, and then luckily defender missed a tackle, scored a touchdown. So from there, I gained a lot of confidence, had two more touchdowns that year, and then we had a very solid year, but it was COVID year, so no playoffs. Season ended, seniors left. Then after that season, I got a one of those envelopes, letters that a lot of kids get around here, where it's just like a local college camp, no big schools, nothing like that, JUCOs, D3s, NAIA schools. And I decided to go out because I just wanted to compete a little bit with no intention of playing college football at all. But after the camp, they told us about like the recruiting process, and I kind of got intrigued by it, and I did some more research, and from there I was like, you know what, maybe I want to use football to get into college. So I was by no means like super committed to football at that time, but I was dabbling with the idea of maybe going forward with it. So sophomore year started, and I had a starting spot. I had a good season, solid season, nothing crazy. We lost in the first round of play, or actually second round of playoffs, and the year ended. And then from there, I was like, all right, I'm ready to put everything into the sport. Like, I love the sport. The loss in the playoffs really hit me hard, and I was like, I don't want this to happen again. I love this team. I love these coaches. Like, I really want to do everything for this program. We also had a lot of juniors and sophomores that year that made the run to the semifinals. So we had like big aspirations going into our junior year, and that was amongst the whole team, because we were like, we thought we could win the CIF title with the team we had the next year. So everyone was working super hard, and I really wanted it. And that's when I kind of started talking to coaches and started building that relationship. I had a lot of good resources, nothing crazy, but my coach my head coach he played at a juke. He went to Golden West, and he had a little bit of expertise in that realm, so he kind of told me a little bit on what to do. But a lot of it, I was just watching videos like similar to this, where it's just like, how do you put yourself out there? How do you market yourself? Like, what camp should I be going to? Satellite camps, individual camps, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, we'll get more into like the specifics of that. But going along, I went to a few camps before my junior season, and I went to one called New England Elite in Boston, which had just a ton of schools, which I would recommend for your junior year or before your junior year, because you don't really know what schools you're going to be talking to. So those big camps early on in the process are really good to just build as many relationships as possible, because you never know who's going to work. And ironically, that's where I met the WashU coach, which was my first interaction with him amongst a ton of other schools. But So that camp happened. Then junior year came, great season, very solid. We did not win CIF. We came up short. We had a few injuries, but I had a good season. I had 1,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. So from that season, I ended up being ranked a 2-star from 247, and that was like the funniest story about that is like I was literally in class and I kind of just like I would always like look at the people who were ranked around me, and one day I literally just looked up my name on 247 and I had 2 stars, and I was like this is actually kind of sick. Like no email, no nothing. Like no one told me anything, and I was super confused about that. And like I let it sit for a few days. That was also the first in school history, so that just shows how small our football base is. But I let that sit for a few days, and I was kinda like, "This is, like, really exciting." So that gave me a lot of confidence, and I think that helped me carry myself because my coach talked to me a lot about it. I kinda battled internally with that, like, inner confidence, inner, like, ego, if you will. Like, I also learned, like, as a wide receiver, you kinda have to have that ego. Like, I need the ball, I want the ball, I need to be that guy. So I think that kinda gave me the confidence to propel me to have a lot more confidence on the field and how I carried myself, which I credit a lot to that. Because if you go under the like, if you don't have that mentality at camps during games, you're gonna sit at the back of the line, sit in the back of plays, you're not gonna make plays, so that was good, that helped a lot. But anyway, from there, I was like, "I think I can do it." I really wanted to go Ivy from there, so I started reaching out to D1 schools. I'm sending, like, hundreds. I probably sent thousands of messages out. Like, if I could show you my phone, scroll through my Twitter DMs, like, I'd scroll for 5 minutes. I'd probably reach out to, like, every school in the country. I was taking shots with, like, USC, UCLA, like, I was trying anything. Obviously, you get, like, 1 in every 10 responses, start building relationships a little bit, but then come May, before my senior summer, I booked a lot of camps, so I was gonna do the whole Ivy tour, basically. So I booked those and was ready to go, but before camp in April, May, I was, like, getting a lot better. I've seen some of the 3-star kids play, 4-star kids, and I'm like, "I really think I can compete with them." And I was like, "I don't know how I'm gonna get my ranking up because I'm not at a big school where 247 or coaches are coming to games, so it's like, I don't know how to get my ranking up, but I want this 3-star." And not that it really mattered in recruitment, but it was more of an individual goal that I really wanted it. So I did some research and found a local camp where the area recruiter for 247 would be at, and I was like, I just got to get in front of him. And while testing, I don't have any crazy 40 times, crazy broad jump or anything like that. I was extremely like maybe like upper average at those. So I didn't impress in testing, but then come position specific drills and one-on-one, I wanted to show this guy like I was here for him. Like I wanted him to see what I can do. And then I was on that camp also awarded an MVP for each position. And I don't think I was on anyone's radar from the testing drills. But then come one-on-ones, I went like 9-0, made it to the finals of one-on-ones and won, and it was against, like, Trinity League. I don't know if you know Trinity League, but it's, like, the top
Yep.
schools in California, like
Yeah.
Mater Dei, Bosco, J. Sarah. I was
Yep.
going against, like, their starting DBs, and I was playing great, and I was beating them, and then after the camp, I went up to him, and I was like, "I know you saw that stuff, like, I need that 3rd star," and he goes, "Alright, Imma have to think about it," and then would you know, a few days later, I checked the account, 3 stars,
Just
and I
gotta
was like
think about it.
yeah, I was like
Sorry, sir.
yeah.
Sorry, King.
I was like, "Let's do it." So that gave me a ton of confidence to go into summer camp, and during that time, I was getting letters from the schools I was talking to, because Ivies were a little different. They weren't offering super early. Like, I saw a few kids get offered. Obviously, it's so hard to tell what's real and what's not real in this process, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll learn that very fast. So it was hard to tell, but, like, I was getting notes where it was like, "You're a top prospect here at Yale. You're a top prospect here at Brown. Like, we want you here. Just come out to camp, do your thing, and you should have a spot." And also, I made it was a priority very early on that I would value school and maintain a high GPA,
Yeah.
and I just think I was lucky that and my school is pretty highly rigorous academically. That's kinda what they're known for, Sage Hill. But I think I'm just lucky. I think parents' previous school experience really helped me with time management. So I was kinda able to balance everything and keep up those grades while focusing on football. So the grades helped a lot with all those schools. Come summer camp, like, that was where it's just disappointing because you can play your best day, and I had camps where I'd play, I'd look in the mirror and be like, "I played as good as I can play," and it's still, like, sometimes they're just not watching you, and it's like, "Alright, you got to go to the next one. So the camps were like for what I thought, I played great. Like in one-on-ones, which I would say I think is the most important because everyone's eyes are on you. I think I lost 3 reps at 8 camps all summer against like solid players. So I was like, I'm doing everything I can, but like no one's pulling an offer. Ivy League. Then I finished almost every camp. I had Cornell at the end of July, but then end of July, I actually got a call from WashU, and they just offered me, and I was like, "This is super, super sick." I didn't see it coming, but that kind of gave me a safety net that I knew that like gave me a lot of peace because there's always before you have that first offer. I had some smaller D3s, but before you have that first offer that you really would go to the school, there's always that like seed of doubt in your head where it's like, what if it doesn't work? Like, what if, like, not saying that's the main thing, but that's always going to be in the back of your head. Like, what if I'm not going to play college football? What if no one's going to take a chance on me? So getting that was a super good feeling. And it gave me a great opportunity at Cornell where at that point, they were probably my number one. And I played the best I could play at the camp. The coaches told me, like, we love what we saw out of you. Like, you're going to have a spot here. Just give us a week to finish up these camps, and we'll text you as soon as the week's over, give you a call. Then literally the week after the camp, whole coaching staff gets fired. Head coach, offensive coordinator, receiving coach. The head coach or the offensive coordinator even came out to my school 2 months earlier. Like we walked around the school. He talked to me for like 30 minutes, and like I was like, oh, I gotta have a spot here if they're doing this. And then wouldn't you know, staff exploded. They didn't even the coach said like I'm out. That's all I got. So that's he's like, I don't have a spot here anymore. I was like, okay, that's tough. Then I then everything shifted. I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to commit to WashU because I also wanted to commit before my senior year because I really wanted to give everything to the team and not have that individual mindset where it's like, oh, I need a touchdown here for me. Like I need it for my film. I need it for this and that. I wanted to be like, no, I just want to win games with my team. Especially as a senior leader, senior captain, I was like, it's a terrible example to set. Like, can't be a selfish guy. So I committed to WashU before the season, not publicly, but I committed to the school because I wanted them to know that I was there for them. The senior year started, and it was like we did not like no shot at my quarterback. He knows who he is, but we didn't have a quarterback going into the year, so he was like trained to be a quarterback that offseason. Like he never played quarterback before, and he's one of my boys. But he did what he could, but he wasn't the greatest quarterback. But like individually, I had a great season, like statistically, like putting up like crazy stats. Like week 3, I had a game where I won Orange County Player of the Week with 5 touchdowns and like 350 all-purpose. So like schools were turning their head, and I was getting like constant messages from schools like Washington State, Fresno State, St. Thomas, schools like that. UCSD was like, we want you out on a game day visit, come out here. But I still had that internal debate on I really wanted to go to a school that had high academics. And I still don't know where I stand with that because I don't know where I stand. I kind of want to take football as far as I can. So I still have an internal debate about that, but I wasn't ready, at least freshman year of college, to like go and be an underdog at a school like Fresno State right away. I feel like the better way for me internally to go about it was establish myself, get playing time early at a smaller school like WashU, getting a ton of film out there, and then transferring to a higher school. And might not be the right decision, but that's at least what I thought was the best way to go about it. So I just had to stick with WashU. Senior year went great, crazy stats. We lost in the first round of playoffs, but it was what it was. And I ended up being the first kid in school history selected to the Orange County All-Star game, which is a super cool experience because it was 2 weeks of practice with the best kids in Orange County. And if you know Orange County football, it's some of the best in the country. So it's kids who are going all over the place. But one thing I did notice is everything with the portal has changed recruiting drastically. And I'm humble enough to admit I was seeing kids who are better than me getting completely screwed over in the recruiting process. Where 5 years ago, these kids, I think every single kid on that roster, almost everyone, would have been a group of 5, if not Power 5 player, right out of high school. But you're just looking down the list, and it's just like so many kids didn't get what they deserve from the recruiting process. And I think that's just more of the normal now. And kids from big schools, it was just tough to see. But like, it's a great experience getting to play with top players in the country, getting customized jersey, all this customized stuff. And the game was a super cool experience in front of thousands of people. So which was unique for me because I'd never played in front of that many people. So it was overall really cool. And then now fully committed to WashU, training as hard as I can, like, but also still have that mentality where for me, obviously the goal has changed a lot, as I just explained. Like it went from just wanting to play to get in, wanting to go Ivy, 3-star, all that stuff. I'm still not content because I don't want to just play in college. I want or play D3 in college, whatever. I want to just take this as far as I can go. And like I don't know what the end goal is because it's ever changing based day to day. But I just know I'm not content. I want to keep training, and that's kind of what keeps me going every day. So that's kind of where I'm at in a little bit of a story, concise, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Well, let's pull it back. So let's go back to kind of the beginning and when you made your decision on saying, you know what, I can actually pursue this. Where does that come from, mentality? Because you have some student athletes that when you're younger, you're focused on other things, right? And you obviously, I wouldn't necessarily say that you were at the time a two-sport athlete, but you became a two-sport
Yeah.
athlete, and you dug into some. So you really focus on one sport, and then you decide, I'm going to try something, and all of a sudden, boom, it blows up, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna fully commit to that. There's not a lot of guys that commit. I think that's one thing we should probably talk about is just commitment to something that you really think that you can pursue, and it's a reality that when kids decide they're going to go and play at the next level, they need to understand it's like, are you good enough? And once you decide, hey, you know what, or maybe I'm good enough, I'm not sure, and then you decide, hey, I'm going to commit to that, because a lot of kids price themselves out. They decide, when they commit to something, especially when they commit to playing at the next level, regardless of your sophomore, junior, senior, they price themselves out and say, you know what, we're all Division I players, we should all play Division I. That's all I'm focusing on. And for you, it was more or less saying, okay, I think I'm good enough, I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to go through the process slowly, stay focused through this process, and then kind of let the chips fall where they may. You're not telling yourself, hey, I'm only committed to this one act of whatever. Because a lot of times when you get to that point, you say, I'm this good. I'm really not, man. Like kids need to understand that you're not. It's here. I'm going to give you some statistics. So it's less than 1% that actually go and play, not just Division I, but just college football or college sports in general. And when you're dealing with recruiting, you have it's like 12, maybe 13 coaches on staff that are recruiting. There's 1.1 million student athletes, or I'm sorry, football players out there. So if you do the math, that's 75,000 each coach has to recruit. Yeah. And of course, you want to recruit the best that you can. So it's like it goes down the right. So it's like your talent goes down, down, down.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about 24/7 and talk about the stars and the rankings and how that impacted you. But talk about the beginning of this whole process. Now you say, you know what, I think I'm good enough. I'm not going to let me being in a smaller school kind of hold me back. Let's pursue this. And what's your mentality?
Yeah. So 2 things I'd have on that is the first thing.
Bring your camera down a little bit.
Okay. The first thing I kind of came up with early on was this internal quote. I would say this was probably after freshman year. It was simply just because of the love of the game. I was like, if I have an opportunity these 4 years to play 4 more years, I'm going to go for it. So the whole time I'd be thinking 4 years right now to play 4 more years. And like, if you simplify it down to that, just based off of the love of the game, not even talking about your skill, I feel like that kind of helped me early on. Like just thinking that if I work really hard these 4 years, I get to do this for 4 more years. And who wouldn't want to do that if it was as simple as that? Obviously, it's not as simple as that. But if you tell yourself that, it helped a lot. And I would say the second part, and my coach talks about this a lot when he's talking about me to other people. He says, like, I wake up with a plan every day on how to reach my goal. And I think for me specifically, I obviously didn't have the greatest genetics or anything like super crazy where I didn't have to do a lot. But the way I went about it is like, because of that, I have to work that much harder. So it's like every day, every decision you make, like once you commit to college football, you have to, like every decision ties back to it. I'm not saying you should live your life obsessed with it to a point that it's unhealthy, but everything you eat, drink, sleep, decisions you make, you got to ask yourself, like, how does this tie into what I want to do? And if you really love the sport, the commitment aspect should just be natural. Because it's like I said, it's if you have an opportunity to play the sport longer and this is what you have to do, you would want to do it. So I think that's kind of where I got from. And then how to get how to get that, like, you were asking how to get that, like, solidification on that you're good enough to play college football.
Yeah.
I think you just gotta keep challenging yourself, keep training with people who are better than you, but also every little victory you have, celebrating it. Like, ironically, I coach my sister's flag football team, and I tell them this, like, every little victory you have on the field, like every completion, every catch, you let it build. Because I think the most important thing in sports is momentum. So if you start to create that momentum, like, okay, I just lifted, let's say 185 was my bench PR. You create momentum, little journeys along the way, you celebrate it. Oh, this coach just responded to me. Like, I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. My 40 time got better. I'm getting closer. So all these little things, you learn to celebrate them, not over celebrate them by any means, because then you'll become content, but celebrate them in a small facet and then let that momentum carry, let that confidence build, and then you'll get to the point where I'm seeing progress. Like, maybe I'm not there right now. Maybe I'm not a college football player this second, but with the progress I'm making because of the work I'm putting in, I'm gonna get there. I think that's how I kind
Yeah.
of went about it.
That is a quote for every single young student athlete right there. Just if you could tie it into one word and just say momentum, bro,
Yeah.
you've got a movement right there.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of student athlete, well, you also talked a lot about one thing that really came up with that to get you that momentum is you're talking about. So I know it went through real quick, but you talked about your coach and you're talking
Yeah.
about your coach. And I always think we have positives and negatives with coaches. You know, you could talk to 10 people, if 5 of them will tell, wow, my coach, coach hates me. But also you have the other side of the coin where a coach can really make a big impact on saying, you
Yeah.
know what, not only are you a good player for me, but if you really want to pursue this, really plant the seed in you.
Yeah.
Uh, that's such a huge thing for a young student. I don't care if you really are that good. If
Yeah.
you're going through the process and getting better, you
Yeah.
never know what could happen. I think a lot of kids, they will almost shoot themselves down before they even get started.
Yeah.
And what's really important is you're talking about your coach and how your coach kind of lit a fire.
Yeah.
And talk real quick about mentors and your coach and how that was impactful for you.
Yeah. I would say that was the number one thing you said. You got to surround yourself with people who won't shoot you down. Sorry. So I think as soon as I told him I wanted to, at least my head coach, as soon as I told him I wanted to play college football, he said, "All right, like, if you're really committed to this, it's going to be a really tough process, but I'm here to support you." And while none of them had like a ton of experience, all my coaches on the staff offered a lot of different experiences. One, our defensive coordinator actually played in the NFL, and he's a very talented. His name is Ricky Sharp. He went to SDSU and played a few years in the NFL. So he was a great mentor. He's a little more quiet, but he led by example, and by that he worked. He kept his head down. So that's kind of where I got a little bit of that from. From my head coach, he was extremely verbal. So he would tell me, like, you have to make a list. So you have to do this. You have to reach out to these people. And I'd write emails and I'd say, do you think this is good? Like, how would a coach receive this? So he'd constantly offer me this feedback. We brought on a receiver coach who actually went to Yale for football. So that was another great opportunity. And I think just using obviously I got extremely fortunate that I had a lot of good resources around me, but if you look around, there's no harm in reaching out to people. Like, I didn't even know you and I shot you a DM. Like, that's kind of who I am and who I've been this whole process. Like, if there's people you see who you can tell who has a good idea of what's going on just based off of first impressions, pages, like all this stuff, videos. Use your resources, like, especially with media right now, it's so easy to find mentors and reach out to them. Like, I'd shoot 100 texts, like reporters, coaches, not like college coaches, just coaches, like guys like First Down Training. I don't know if you know who that is, but like DM them, build a rapport, ask them questions, because you have to be humble enough to know that they have more knowledge than you in this because they've done it longer. They've been around the sport longer. So just use them as resources, learn from them, and don't be afraid to like get left on red or get rejected by a coach and who doesn't offer advice. Not everyone's going to offer great advice, but you take all of that and don't be afraid to ask for sure.
Yeah, I always tell young student athletes, it's like you're only going to be able, as a coach, you're only going to be able, or a mentor, right? You're only going to be able to grab one or two maybe out
Yeah.
of, let's say, 10. But those one or two, I make it very clear. It's like you have to have courage. You can't young student athletes, especially when you're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, one of the big issues is lack of courage. And like you were mentioning earlier, how you sent out thousands of emails and you reached out to this person and that person. It's like there's nothing wrong with not getting a response or somebody telling you no or failing. You're going to have to go through that at some capacity, especially when you get onto a next level campus, especially at practice. Forget about walking out the tunnel and all that. When you get onto the practice, remember as a freshman, I know it's kind of a side note, but when you come in there, you're going to be the freshman again. You're dealing with guys that are juniors and seniors that have been in the program and been in off-season programs and understand the mentality, and they're going to try to bully you and try to beat you up and try to make you quit as they don't want their position to be taken. And so, failing, getting told no, being in those kind of situations, you have to tread water when you're younger. And if you don't, you're not going to be prepared. And so I really appreciate that, man. That's huge. And then obviously hearing that from a coach, from you talking about your coach that way and having that relationship with a coach is so important, because not only does it give you that fire to move forward, but it also gives something to fall back on when you do have tough situations, especially when you get into college or even off the field, right? You can reach out to a mentor you feel comfortable with, and somebody you can feel like I don't want to use safe space, but it's a situation where you feel like you can just open up. And coaches that are watching this, you guys don't understand how important it is, your role. You could be just a stipend coach. You could be somebody that just is there for a season, but it's you realize like sometimes there's a connection that you have with young student athletes, and I don't think a lot of coaches understand how important their role is and how that can affect somebody. And there's a ton of videos on YouTube of just impact and influence. Well, but moving forward, so now you're in the process. So now you're say a junior. You were talking about as a junior, now you've committed. Now you're going to go to some camps. Now you're going to kind of just explore what your next step is, and talk about like your junior year and moving forward with that.
Yeah, so I would say at least mentally, junior year was the toughest I was ever tested. Not even physically. Physically was pretty much the same, just training, usual stuff. But it was really hard and something I still kind of struggle to grasp with. And obviously, it's just the nature of recruitment. It's a tough business, but at least from my end, I was trying to make real, like, genuine human connections with all these coaches, like getting to know them. And it's just tough because some days you're gonna just get like the relationship will end and you're just getting ghosted. And I think another thing my coach also mentioned is the people around you have no clue what you're going through. And I think that's also a misconception with a lot of kids nowadays. They do a lot of workouts, a lot of stuff just for Instagram or for people to see it. Once you commit to playing college football, you got to realize you got to do things that no one wants to do and no one's going to know that you're doing them. And that's just the nature of it. And you need to be ready for that. You got to wake up early when no one's awake and do the workouts. And don't post any pictures on social media, none of that. You just got to be okay with doing it and love that. But then as going back to, I guess, got a little distracted, but going back to junior year and stuff. Yeah, so just making a lot of relationships and then just stopping all of a sudden and then going to camps and kind of learning how camps work, because a lot of coaches will tell you a lot of different things, but the number one thing you can't do at camps, and I learned really early on, is you can't sit back, sit at the end of lines, because a lot of these coaches and a lot of these camps are just there to make money, and they want to make money. And the experience you get at these individual college camps are what you put in. So if you're the kid who's constantly at every water break going up to coaches while you think it might be annoying, it's what you got to do. You got to talk to all these coaches at every opportunity you get. They're there for you. Every one-on-one drill, jump to the front of the line. Don't be disrespectful, obviously, but jump to the front of the line, because you'll notice there's kids who are trying to sit back and hide, which is like, that can't be your mentality. If you're going out to a college camp, you're there to prove something. If you don't think you're ready to prove something, there's no shame in that. Prepare more on your own and then go out once you're confident and ready to perform. But the second you step foot on that college camp to show who you are, you got to be ready to perform and show all these coaches what you got. So I think that was a big thing I learned early on in that junior summer, just being ready to compete and also be ready to be disappointed after camps. Like the nature of any sport is you're not gonna play perfect every day, and obviously it sucks if you don't play your best at as important a moment of a camp, but it's gonna happen. So you got to learn to deal with disappointment, and I think that was tough, but definitely a good skill to have.
Yeah. So this is one thing that definitely keeps coming up when we talk about camps. So let's dig into camps.
Mm-hmm.
So you decide, hey, I'm going to start going to camps. I know camps are very trendy. I know camps are very, but here's what separates one student athlete from another when they're deciding on, hey, I'm going to start going to camps. Kids will go to camps just to go to camps to get some. Will go to the camps to get gear, to flash, put it on social media, make you look good, whatever. But then there's the other student athletes, and I always talk about camps and the importance of them, but not to take them, super duper seriously, but especially when you're a junior. But being prepared. You've got one student athlete that's going into it for one thing, and then the other one that's going into it for the right reasons, right? You're going into it prepared, and you maybe got a list of questions.
Yeah.
I'm breaking this whole thing down, Daniel. This course that I'm putting together, I'm breaking it down to where it's simple. If you decide, hey, I'm going to go do this next level thing, okay, here's one aspect of it. You want to get exposure, and exposure through camps is important, but it's not going to be a deal breaker necessarily. It's all about exposure. However, when you go to these camps, you got to make them count. You can't just go pay the money and then go and run routes and all that and meet people and whatever, because once the camp's over, it's over, right? So a lot of time, and you mentioned this earlier, a lot of times these coaches and these schools, they'll put camps together to where it's kind of a money grab, right? Let's be honest. But at the same time, they also want to be able to get around recruiting so they can put you in a database. So once you do get to be a senior, because they're not really going to recruit juniors heavily, they're just going to say, okay, well, we know who he is. Oh, yeah, last year we recruited him. Look at where he was then to where he is now. Coaches, I think you can lose a lot if you don't progress from that too, because coaches, they'll go from one school to the next and bounce all over the place, and they'll try to keep in touch. And so going into camps, it's important to have a list of questions, have a purpose going into them, try to build that relationship with these guys and make an impact. And you're 100% correct. Be at the front of the line, in between drills, meeting them, whatever it is, go above and beyond, do what other kids are not doing. But have a lasting impact. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about junior season. When you become a senior,
very different,
right? When you become a senior, you need to dial those questions in, because these coaches probably should know you by then. But I always tell kids, when you go in, I know I'm talking, I'll let you talk. But you go in with questions, you go in with a purpose as a junior to get that experience, communication, whatever. And then when you get to be a senior, that needs to be a little bit more dialed in on what it is moving forward. Those coaches should know you before, and then you should reach out to them, in my opinion, before the camp.
For sure.
Reach out to them during the camp, and then afterwards, coach, what did you think of me? What should I do moving forward? And then so on. So you just talked about your junior year. Now let's talk about moving forward in the preparation going into your senior year, because this is your final impression you're going to make with these guys.
Yeah. So like you said, the way I'd go about camp season, like just one by one, is like we said, junior year, I'd aim it at just getting your face in front of as many people as possible and building as many relationships as possible. But then once you go to senior year, you have to be very intentional with what camps you choose to go to. And I think that's when you kind of need to be realistic. Like if you're not talking to a school your senior year, I think the likelihood of you getting an offer by just showing up at a camp when they don't expect you to be there is very low. So I'd be very intentional with where you go. I would say don't go to a camp your senior year unless you're invited or you reach out and they know you're going. So as soon as you get there, you're already on their radar. And I think that's definitely how, if there's a school you really love and you just want to take a shot with, I wouldn't shoot it down. Like, obviously, go for it, but don't like be disappointed when they don't even talk to you. Because if they're not, if you're not on their radar before you get there, then it's a problem. So I would say that whole before your senior summer, that whole like spring, winter period, you need to be using to just build that relationship, get to know them, like send them workouts, send them progress and stuff like that. So then right when you get on campus, you're like, oh, you're that guy. Like I remember I walked through the door and at the Penn camp and like I saw the head coach and he knew my name right away. And like that's just a good feeling you want to have because you've built that relationship and done all the heavy lifting before you get onto campus for your senior year. So then you can just focus on football. Because obviously junior year is different because that's when you're building the relationship. So junior year camp, you're gonna do a lot more talking. But by the time you get to that camp your senior year, all the relationship building and talking should already be established where you're kind of on a friendly term with a coach. Like you can even throw a joke in, like you're on that kind of rapport where you know each other. And I think that's where I kind of got with most of the schools I wanted to talk to, where once I got to those camps, I was ready to just like be friendly and show them. Because who once they know who you are as a person and you check that box, and that's also a very big part because professionalism and how you carry yourself, coaches obviously take note of. So that's a big part, and a lot of kids maybe don't know that. But once you check that box, it simplifies it a lot. Where you just have to show up and play football, and once you check that box, then okay, you do what you need to do. So I think that's probably how I would go about camp senior year.
So when you're looking for a camp to go to, what how do you break that down? How do you decide on camps that you're interested in going to?
Yeah. So the way I went about recruiting as a whole and how to select what was which is I made a list and I literally still have the list, but it was three categories. The top category was schools that would have to take a shot on me. So like I'm not necessarily the average guy. Maybe I'm a little smaller, a little slower. They'd have to take a little bit of a shot on me. So that was tier three. That was the top. So it's like maybe for me specifically, like high Ivies, stuff like that. And then tier two was it'd be a perfect match. Like I'm good enough to play there based off of the players they have, and they'd be lucky to have me, and it'd be just a good fit. And then tier one would be schools where they'd be lucky to have me. Like I believe I'm better than most of their players, and they would be really lucky to have me. So I looked up schools that I liked, like high academic, whatever, that fit what I wanted, and I divided them into the tiers. And I kind of before camp season went and looked at that list and chose like two schools from the top, two schools from the middle, two schools from the bottom that I'd built a relationship with. And that's kind of how I chose what it was. And also, camps are expensive. Camps take a lot of travel time. So you also kind of have to be smart because, I mean, at least for me, I traveled with my dad, and it's like my dad wasn't ready to just like take a bunch. I know some parents are. But my dad couldn't just take like 5 weeks off in the summer to just travel back and forth. So we kind of had to just we picked 2 weekends and it was like, or 2 weeks, sorry, and we just did like 4 East Coast camps, like back to back to back to back, because it was easy. And then same thing the second week. So you had to be like all these variables you kind of had to put together, and that's what we did.
Yeah. Well, and you also think about it like this. So you had access to, being able to move around, fly around, and whether it comes to the resources or whatever. Did you run into any young student athletes that maybe didn't have a lot of resources? And did they tell you kind of what their process was?
Yeah, I think like it's 100% not an end all be all if you can't get to a camp. Like at the number like, the way I look at it, the number one thing they're recruiting you off of is game film, and I think obviously I'm not a huge expert, but that's the way leaving this whole process, I think is the most important thing. So number one is game film. So I would say really put effort into your highlight reel, especially like you said, if you don't have these opportunities to go to camps, put a lot of effort into your highlight reel. Watch all these tutorials about what to put first, put your best plays first, don't highlight yourself. All these little tips you can find all over the internet. So definitely focus on your highlight reel if you can't get out to a camp. Send these progress videos. While you think they're corny or whatever, seeing you lift, I really do think they help because it shows progress. And then I don't know who told me this early on in the process, But if you have things that just show you're athletic, like let's say you can dunk a basketball, backflip, all these stuff, I would recommend posting them on Twitter because these little things are just show you're if you're a multi-sport athlete, post highlights in other sports. Just shows you're able to do other things. So there's a lot of ways to make up for not being at a camp. And then same thing, call the coach, reach out to him, be friendly, and tell him like be honest with him. I'm not able to make out to this camp. I don't have the resources to make it. Obviously, you don't have to say that specifically, but I'm not able to make it out to the camp for whatever reason. And be transparent with them because by you showing vulnerability with the coach, they're going to be able to trust you, build that human connection, which is, like I said early on, very important in a box they're looking to check.
Yeah. So I really want to shift gears because there's something you mentioned that I really want to talk about. And obviously me being the coach, you being the athlete, and how we put this thing together. And obviously you mentioned, your highlight film and how important that is. Now let's talk about how you set your highlight film up. Now you tell me and tell the audience how you did it. And I'm going to explain from a coach's point of view what we're looking for. So go ahead and do that.
So the coolest thing I was told from a highlight standpoint, and this was my head coach, is I think before junior year, he pulled me aside and he goes, what you need to think about this year is when you're making plays is you need to make plays where you don't even need to circle yourself before the play. So I don't know if you've seen a lot of highlights, but you highlight yourself and it's like, you know who you are. But the way that instilled in my mind is like, I'm making plays where they already know who I am. Like deep ball, they know it's me, whatever. So when I started designing my highlight reel, for sure, put all your best plays at the front. Second thing, do not make it too long. They're probably not watching the whole reel, honestly. They're probably watching a minute to 90 seconds of it, if that. Another thing I did that I liked, I haven't seen a lot of people do this, is the highlight reel started and I put like an image of me, my height, weight, all my stats, all my accolades, like all CIF, all league, whatever. So they just had that right away. Because sometimes they're not reading the whole text, they're just clicking the link, and that's more than likely. Then don't put all the flashy circles that take like 5 seconds. They don't want to see any of that. Cut the plays down so it's just bang, bang, quick, play after play after play. They want to see touchdowns. They want to see big plays. And then don't waste your time on plays that are average. Put all the plays that would take you to the next level and translate. And then another thing, I mean, obviously I didn't play other positions, but for receiver at least, they want to see speed. Put speed on that highlight reel. They want to see physicality. They want to see breaking tackles. They want to see high pointing the ball. All the things you think they're looking for in a receiver, definitely put. And I'd say that go for anything. If you're a quarterback, show off your arm talent. If you're a DN, show off your strength, show off your speed, show off your technique. So I'd say that's all important. Another thing that a coach told me early on in the process that was cool is on your Twitter, screen record your highlight reel and put it in your Twitter and pin it. Because a lot of the times, coaches aren't clicking the link because maybe they're at an airport, there's bad Wi-Fi, they're clicking the link, it doesn't work, it takes forever to load, they have 2 seconds, it doesn't load, they're like, all right, next one. You missed an opportunity. Maybe that coach would have changed your life, but you missed the opportunity. So by having it there where it's just constantly playing, maybe they see that first play because, like I said, your best plays are at the front. They see that first play and they're like, who is this? So I had that pinned and it would get a ton of views and sometimes coaches would reach out because of it. So I would recommend put that link or put that highlight reel everywhere you can because you never know who's going to see that first play that blows a coach away. So I think that's probably everything I had on the highlight reel. Yeah, just none of that stupid circles like the watch this or any of that on Huddle. Oh, and then don't do any dumb music, none of that. They don't want to see any of that. They just want professionalism. They're watching a million highlight reels a day. They don't need to see any like stuff that would make them think twice about you.
Yeah. It's really interesting when I run into young student athletes and I'm like, whether a kid said, hey, go check out my friend, or I'm just scrolling through and I see a kid and I look at your avatar and I'm going to talk about like I said, what I'm looking for and what coaches look for at the highest levels. But you see somebody, oh, he's a football player. He looks big. Okay. So then you click on their profile and then there's nothing on there. If there's anything I can tell a young student athlete, stop not putting your name on. If you're serious, okay, listen, now I'm going to get fired up here. So if you are serious about being a next level student athlete, You have to treat your entire life when it comes to communicating to coaches as such. If I go on your freaking profile and I see A money or T money, or I don't even know what your name is, I'm not recruiting you because I don't know what your name is.
100%.
Right? There's a lot. It's like, I get it. You have however many followers. I'm not one of them. I'm not going to be one of them. It's like, my goal as a coach is I'm recruiting you, Daniel, to be better than the guys I got right now.
Yeah.
I'm looking to out recruit those guys. And so, like you mentioned about speed, and you want to have your highlights, everything needs to be very specific to your position. And that's 100% correct. But if I can't actually get past your profile to recruit you, we've got a problem. Or not me, because I don't care. I got thousands of guys I'm dealing with, right? I'm going to the next guy. Now, a lot of times these coaches, they're not necessarily recruiting, or they're not going on social media to recruit receivers only, because that's not how it works. You're just looking for guys, and then you say, whoa, look at that, and then move forward with the process. So what I'm telling kids, it's like, when, first of all, the picture need to be some sort of sporty picture. It has, it has to be something that's going to draw my attention right away. If you're a receiver, running back, put that on there, and get me to stop. I talked about this on the last podcast I was on, and get me to stop in my tracks. I'm always recruiting. Coaches are always recruiting. Stop already. They don't care about their family stuff. If they're on social media, they're on social media to find recruits. Coaches are crazy. That's all they do 24/7. Coaches are a different breed. So they're looking to find anything that can distract them from whatever they're doing. Keep in mind, it's also entertainment too. So when you're going down and they click on your highlights, they want to be like, damn, let's keep this rolling. They don't want to be like, this guy's 5'7", this is a joke. But you always got to make sure you got a good avatar. You got to have your name on there. You got to have your email. You got to have all your contact information. Here's one thing kids screw up on. Here's the don'ts, right? Obviously, you'll have a situation where they'll have their name. Okay, we're good. Now give me your height and weight. Give me your position. If that stops right there, awesome. Now I can message you and say, okay, whatever. Get your highlights on there. Now we're moving forward in the conversation here with you about highlights. Your highlights need to be your absolute best right away. And it's not to be long. I just talked to one of my buddies who was with Michigan, coaching with Michigan. And I asked him, I said, so when we're talking about recruiting, you guys are dealing with thousands of student athletes, and they're the top athletes. What is your recruiting guy? What is he doing when he's looking at film, and what does he look for? He goes, just so you know, he's like, my guy will put his headphones in and he'll be listening to music or a podcast while he's watching film. Watching kids film. And if you've got music on there and you've got all this flash or whatever you think is interesting, it's not interesting to a coach. They don't care. It's not going to draw their attention. When I'm in the war room, as we call it, and we're around all the coaches, we're all watching the film. So say you jumped off the table in your film, we all put it on mute. We don't care about all that crap, because the first thing that Huddle does, they've got advertisements, they got all this stuff. We don't have any interest in that crap. It probably, honestly, I would almost push kids away from Huddle to a certain degree. And maybe I should start a new thing, because coaches it's so frustrating, because it's Huddle's fault. Huddle's got all those advertisements and stuff, and it really kills the process. But making sure you've got your absolute best from the start to the finish, which should only be about 3 to 5 plays. Coaches have short attention spans, and just like anybody, they got short attention spans. And so it's one of those things when you're setting up your highlight film. Well, first of all, to get their attention, you got to have all your social media dialed in. Every single coach is on Twitter. When they get hired at a school, they're all on Twitter. Doesn't matter. They're all on Twitter. Just making sure you have all that proper information with your link, with your communication, because they can't communicate if it's not on there. Kids don't even put an email on there. Like, it's just like, dude, I don't care about you holding money up. I don't care about all that stuff. Like, just give me just enough to make me interested, and now I'm on to you. So anyway, So that's kind of my rant, and it
Yeah,
drives
yeah.
crazy.
I feel you.
It drives every coach crazy. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter what level you are on. Like I
yeah.
said, I'm close with coaches at the highest levels,
Mhm.
and I could get one of my buddies who was at the Power Five. He's in the NFL now, but
Yeah.
he could have his own podcast, and we just sit there and going off on kids.
Yeah.
It's just maybe that's what I should do down the road. Is I'll pull up kids' profiles and just be like, God, this kid. I'm gonna call him right now and be like, "You're so dumb, dude. Like you can't. You're shooting yourself in the foot." Anyway, but setting up your highlights. Highlights are the most important thing. But
For sure.
even before that, you got to be able to stop a coach. You got to be a businessman when you're, a young student athlete. You got to treat it as business. You got to treat it. I wouldn't say like, an NIL situation, but you need to be able to communicate. You got to be a businessman. You got to put things together so a coach could say, you know what, boom, I'm in. I'm
Yeah.
in on this guy. And then we move forward in the process because there's so many kids out there that are going to get overlooked because they just don't put themselves out there. It just is what it absolutely is. And last thing I'll say with the highlights, you are 100% correct. If I like you and I like your film and I just watched it and I follow you or whatever, I stay on you and I'm scrolling through. Get
Yeah.
get rid of all the negativity and all the things that are going to distract you on your timeline. Coaches
Yeah.
want to see things. It's kind of interesting to me. You show me how much you can bench or that you're doing stuff off the field.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, in your highlight film, don't ever put 7-on-7 on there. Don't
Oh,
put
yeah.
practice
No,
on there.
no way. Yeah.
That's the dumbest.
Yeah. I've not seen that yet. I have not seen someone put 7-on-7 on a real film. That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
actually crazy.
no, that's you. It's very common when
That's
a kid
insane.
doesn't feel like his best film in games is not it,
Yeah,
then
that's
they'll start putting 7-on-7 and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, my point is, and this stuff just pops up as we're talking here, but making sure that your highlight film is dialed in, make sure your profile is dialed in, and then on your timeline, you're putting the good stuff on there and it's
yeah.
positive, it's not negative. And then
Mhm.
also, I would say go on your followers list or whoever that could distract you, get rid of all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's all about you this senior year and
Yeah.
what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah.
So now we're moving forward. We're talking about your senior year. Moving forward, you're building a relationship with these coaches.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the process of staying in communication with the coaches. You've gone to all the camps, done all the off-season work.
Yeah.
Talk about the communication aspect moving forward, and then also developing as a
Yeah.
student athlete in the off seasons.
Yeah. So I think like once you kind of build that initial relationship, like for most coaches, I kind of had a template on how I introduced myself, where it was
Mhm.
like, I'm Daniel, blah blah blah, height, weight, all the good stuff. But
Yeah.
then once you start building that relationship, every coach is different, so you kind of start saying different things, having different conversations. But at least from during the season, I didn't want to spam them every week, but I think it was around every 3 weeks. I kind of just sent like a little check in on how I was doing, like, oh, we went 2-1. I scored blah blah blah. I'm doing this. My weight is this. So I kind of just send like constant check-ins so they don't forget about you and they see that you're making progress and they know you're putting in work. Same with the off season. Maybe not as frequently, but you're more so like this last month and a half, I've been focusing on speed. I've got my 40 to this, all this stuff. Maybe you include a video, stuff like that. So just keeping them in the loop and any questions they have, ask them. But also at the same time, maybe you don't have a genuine question, but you still want to show interest. So maybe you ask them like some things I would ask are like, how many receivers are you taking this year? Like, do you guys have any opportunities to visit? All this stuff. And then if they do, offer you opportunities to visit without you maybe even asking, because I know that happened a few times. Be very gracious, even if you're not going, like express your interest, say all this stuff. Because even if you think you're not going to that school, I would not cut any relationships off ever until you know you're committed and you're down to like 3 maybe, or you're down to 1. Like
Great
every
point.
school I talked to, I kept, no matter if it was a small
Yeah.
D3 school that I like couldn't see myself ever going to, or maybe it was an FCS school that I really like. You keep all those relationships because you never know where you're going to end up. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, and you have to be ready to put in effort. Like maybe a coach really, maybe a smaller school that you don't think you're going to go to wants to hop on a call. Take 20 minutes out of your day and do it. Like it's better spent than scrolling through your phone, not doing anything, because you never know. Maybe that's the school you're going to end up going to. So you have to be ready to put in effort. And it's like you said, you have to learn to market yourself. And like what you're selling is literally yourself. Like you're selling you as a person, and who knows you better than yourself. So put all your best qualities out there, put all your best foot forward, all that stuff, and be ready to sell yourself as a person, as a player, as a student, everything. So I think, yeah, that's where I was at senior year from a relationship standpoint.
Well, it's interesting because one thing that you mentioned there is you said, well, if you don't have a genuine question, then you move on to something else when you're having a conversation with a coach. I'll throw something out there right there that I think will build an even tighter relationship. Just ask them what their road was when they went through recruiting. Ask them what they used to ask coaches. Just ask them questions that are generally, you're making it seem like, I mean, you're getting information out of them, but they're talking about themselves. Everybody wants to talk about themselves, man. Like everybody is just, and ask them about their home life. Are you married? Do you have, did you play in college? Because when I'm meeting somebody, I always compliment them on their clothes or something. This stuff sounds so dumb and so tedious, but I'm telling you, you will know. You don't even know their name. They won't even know your name, but they'll know that you asked them about, they're from New York. They're a big Yankees fan, right? So every time they talk to you, it's not football. It's something that's just fun, and it's about them, and it builds relationships, man, and it's fun. And it makes your life a hell of a lot easier. And here's another thing. That coach may not be where they are right now. So they may end up getting a job going from, Washington University to all of a sudden they go to Division I AA or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Hey, he's still talking to me. We're still communicating. He seems like a nice guy. Seems like he could play. We may have a walk-on spot, or I don't know. Boom. And they end up giving you that opportunity. There's many different factors that go into it, but it's all about building, first impressions and building relationships and good relationships. I want one more thing about camps.
Yeah.
I know that we're talking about highlights. We're kind of bouncing around a little bit, but the last thing I want to ask you about camps, this is that off season going into your senior year when you're going to camps. Did you ever run into situations where a kid came to a camp? Maybe he was one of the higher rated guys, but he hurt himself, not physically hurt himself, but did something at camp where all the kids were in the back. Like, what the heck? That kid's for sure hurting himself by his attitude or how he presented himself.
For sure. No, I've seen kids get in fights at camps. I've seen kids do way too much. Like they're watching every little action, especially if you're a guy who's already on their radar and they're watching you. If you're a guy who just showed up, you might get away with some stuff. But if you're a guy who is on the top of their list, you got to be professional in all aspects because they're trying to see who you are as a person. So I've definitely seen guys like throw it away because they got heated over one rep. Like that's not who they want. They don't want a guy in a game who loses a rep and gets unnecessary roughness. That's not who they're looking for. So I think you definitely got to be smart. I think underrated thing is also it's not the worst thing if you're not good at a drill and you're not good at a drill in testing, don't run it. Like you don't have to run it. And I think I kind of learned that early on. I was never great at the 40. Like I had really solid 3-cone broad jump times, but I was never good at the 40 and I couldn't ever get the start down. And I know my speed translated at receiver and I trusted my speed at receiver, but for whatever reason, I didn't love my 40 time. Some camps I wouldn't run it. And I found a lot more success in doing that. And I'm not saying don't run your 40 time, and don't work on it. Like I work on it a ton, but I'm saying if it's a really high camp and you're in good standing, don't put any question marks into the equation by running a bad 40. Because sometimes schools, you don't know what schools prioritize. Some schools, the 40 might be the most important thing because they want speed at your position. Or some schools, the 40 might be completely irrelevant. They just want to see what you are in the 1v1s or whatever. So just be smart and think through everything you do at camps because you never know what is going to be like the make or break factor.
Yeah. What did you do physically? So I've got some coaches coming on that are strength coaches. Actually, the next podcast I'm dropping, is shout out to Coach Conley. He's the head strength coach at ASU, Arizona State. We haven't really dug into that, but so what was your approach going? So from junior to senior year, let's dial into the physical side of it.
Yeah.
So you physically, where were you when you were a junior to where you were a senior physically? And what did you do in the off season? Because some kids will just naturally they'll get bigger because they've got good genetics, God helped them out type of thing. But going from junior to senior year, what did you do physically?
No, I love this question. This is my stuff. So junior or sophomore year ended, I would say I was probably about I was pretty light. I was like 150, like something crazy like that. I was pretty fast, but I was 150 and I was like, all right, like if I'm ready to play at the next level, it's time to put on weight. So I think the priority for that season going into junior year was just putting on. I think each off season I had, the 3 off seasons, including this one, I sit down after the season, I write what my priorities are and kind of a general outline of where I want to be. So that off season was like, I just got to put on size, man, like at size and strength. So I will say I neglected speed a little bit that off season, but I just put on strength. I played my junior year at 175. So I put on 25 pounds, majority muscle. And then the season before my senior year was when I really like wanted to dial in on speed and just being a better receiver because I thought that was critical for going into senior camps like we talked about and my senior season. I want to be the best receiver I can be. So early on in that offseason, my school doesn't do a ton of offseason. So I went out and talked to a bunch of 7-on-7 teams and I went and started training at J. Sarah, which is one of the like top football schools in the country, honestly. So I started training there and just did a lot of receiver work, trained with people, 4-star receivers, 3-star receivers, like former NFL receiver coaches. So I was just working with the best I could find. And like, I was not winning a lot of reps, but I was getting better and I could tell. So obviously during all this time, I was still keeping up with lifting and just kind of trying to build strength genuinely or gradually. And then that's also where I took up track. And the funny story about why I started track is I was talking to the Idaho State coach and he's like, "What's your 100 time?" And I was like, "I've never run 100 before. Like, I don't know." And he's like, "You got to run track, man. Like every receiver runs track." And like I didn't even want to go to the school really. And I was just talking to this coach just to like talk. And from that interaction, I ended up joining track and running track for 2 years, like literally solely because of that conversation. So I ended up running track. It's actually the funny thing about track is I think it's physically more like I feel like I got more hurt in track than football just because of the tough impact on your legs. But regardless, I ran track and got faster. So that offseason was big on speed. And I honestly actually lost a little weight that offseason. I played that year at 160, my senior year at like 165, 170, probably 165. And then this offseason, I think, is when after my senior year, ironically, I've seen the most progress. I've been like going really hard in the gym, especially focused on lower body, which I think is the most important for a football player, at least a receiver. Obviously, I don't know the other positions. Got to have lower body strength, stability, balance. So I think on a weekly basis, it's just like I'm lifting 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes. I'm doing 3 lower body. And when I lift lower body, I lift with a coach who specializes on that because I think lower body is a lot higher injury risk. You need a lot more programming. You need a lot more expertise. So I lift lower body with him and we go hard lower body, back squats, cleans, deadlifts, all the compound movements, front squats. Got to be hitting all that hard. And then upper body, not I hit it hard more on my own, but not as important. But I've seen a lot of progress in the lifts individually. And then the way I treat the off season, and I kind of gone about this all 3 years, is that like winter to early spring period. I don't think you should hyper fixate on football and position specific stuff because I think the reality of every sport is burnout is a real thing. So you don't want to be thinking receiver, 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 12 months of the year, 365 days of the year. So that like winter to spring period, I'm kind of more, how can I get my body to where it needs to be, where I'm just putting on muscle, I'm putting on speed. So I really focus on my body in that time period. Well, I'm not forgetting football. I'm still probably doing jug machine like 4 or 5 days a week. I'm going out maybe like once every 2 weeks, maybe catching balls once every 2 weeks with a quarterback just to stay sharp, but not like super hyper fixated on it. but I'm going hard. I'm doing sleds. I'm doing all that stuff on the field to just build speed, like resisted sprints, all that stuff. Really focusing on your technique, sprinting, all that stuff. Then come around now, actually, is when I would transition more to like I'm practicing breaking down, I'm practicing releases, all this stuff. And then the number one thing kids always forget, and I've definitely been victim of this, but I've got a lot better, is recovery. You got to recover. You got to recover hard. The three things you can control in your physical well-being on the off season are hydration, or I'll just say nutrition, which takes hydration and eating. So I'll say nutrition, stretching, and just like recovery, and then sleep. Gotta sleep. You gotta prioritize sleep. You gotta prioritize what you're putting in your body. Everyone's different, but like for me specifically, I haven't had candy soda in 3 years. Like I think cutting it out was the best thing for me. No sugar and putting in things that I want. I've had this whole off season, I've wanted to put on weight, but in a lean fashion, like not gain fat. I'm at 185 right now, and I was at like 165 to start the off season. And I would say I got faster. So it's been a big off season for me. And I just like, I've had 3 protein shakes every day. You just got to find what works for you. Everybody's different. And there's no one set like nutrition plan that's going to work for you. So I think finding that is huge. Finding the sleep you need is huge. And then finding a recovery plan and sticking to it that works for you is huge. Same thing. Recovery is like very individually based. Like, and that's also another one where use your resources. Like, get close with your athletic trainer. Like, that's a big underrated thing, at least for me, that's helped. Like, I've built a very good relationship with my athletic trainer where even in the off season, if I have something wrong, I go in there and get help. So all these things you got to be very intentional with in the off season and have a plan. Never go like you see. I see a lot of my teammates do this. A lot of kids do this. Don't go into the gym like without a plan. Like, know what you're doing. Don't just be like, all right, today should I squat or should I bench? Like, that should never be the question. Like, you got to know what you're doing every day and like be intentional with it. I journal this is a new thing. I started as of 3 months, but I journal every workout. So you see progress. You can identify like, if my hamstring hurts, why does my hamstring hurt? Oh, I deadlifted 2 days ago. So you're able to identify all these things. I think just be very intentional with your off season training.
Yeah. Here's another thing that, something that you mentioned a little bit, but coaches really, really, really like 2 and 3 sport athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And that when guys specialize, it's like, I don't know, we run into baseball players that play all year round, soccer, they go do all that. But, when it comes to football coaches, they love guys that do multiple sports, especially when it's track, when it's baseball. You listen, man, you can get recruited based off of your film of doing another sport. I promise you, coaches will be interested and they're going to see that. So you go and you're doing track and everything. It really makes a difference. And obviously physically you're going to get strong, you're going to get faster, you're going to develop. But man, it's like it's such an important thing. And even with big offensive linemen, they go do track. That makes them more explosive when it comes to throwing the shot and the disc. And me growing up in Oregon, we had the javelin where guys would throw that thing, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And obviously guys are going to, like I said, develop and get better. And you just never know too. I mean, it might be a situation where all of a sudden now a track coach is like, you know what, we want him too. He's coming out here. Okay, well, listen, we'll try to, find a way to. So it's you never not flip over any stone or however the quote goes, but it's one of those things too where it just, as far as an athlete, I think we get it wrong, and the fact that we think that it's one size fits all, everybody's in this box, and that if you want to become a better football player, you just got to be football all the time, and that's not the case. And you ask any coach, they'll tell you if you do multiple sports, it's going to increase. Like a lot of stuff we talked about earlier, you can almost bypass a lot of that if you're a 2-sport athlete, because you're going to increase and get better and develop faster as an athlete. Yeah. And then not only that, but you're going to be just better physically, mentally, emotionally, everything doing that. And you're going to get more exposure. You're going to have more content than you can imagine. If a coach stops on your Twitter and scroll and they see you throwing a shot 55 feet, they're going to be like, you got to be kidding me. This guy. And it's also something fun to talk about. And you talk to a coach and the coach will tell, oh yeah, I also did this. And now you build a relationship. So it's such a big thing. And so moving forward, so let's talk about just before you're getting into season and a little bit into the season, your senior year, how did you talked about sending out thousands of emails and you called and texted and do all these different things. What do you think was the most impactful thing that you did as far as all of those? When you talk about sending out emails, what was the most impactful of all of that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I made a mid-season highlight reel early in my senior year. I think that helped. I did the same thing junior year. It's just tough because every school individually is looking for different things. So I think being able to identify that and kind of figuring out what and like cater to what each coach needs, especially with the schools you're really interested in. So I think, yeah, that's definitely a tough question, but I think just sending your stats, keeping them updated. But I don't think there's like one specific message or one specific thing I like came across that really helped me because I think it really was just different for every school, and every school was looking for different things. Maybe
Yeah.
just keeping, I would say, I mean, one thing that makes it super easy for coaches is just having a good transcript and being able to send that to them confidently where you have no doubt and you know they're going to have no doubt. So I think that just makes your life easier. So I think sending transcript out that's good is super easy to control.
So how many emails would you say that you sent out? At
Dude,
least.
like I can show you, like I'll scroll through my Twitter right now. You can just see the this is only Twitter too. Like emails is like this is like
Wait, so that's just those are DMs?
these are all Twitter DM. It's still going, dude. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Dude, it's still going. Like, but that's just DMs and like that
yeah.
and like I just spend like in class, like not saying you shouldn't listen in class, but like I'd be in class on my computer looking up like Fresno State coaches. All right, every single email. Well, I had the same. I created very early on in the off season for each off season. I created a template, and it would just be like, "Dear," and then like blank. I'm super interested in Fresno, like blank, fill in the college, and then everything else was the same. And then the end was like, I really love the city of blah blah blah. Fill it in. So it was like a little personal, but basically the same template for everything. Yeah, I'm just sitting there in class, like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste for every single coach, just seeing who would reach out and just trying. Oh, filling I forgot all about this. Filling out all those like miscellaneous questionnaires like in class to get on their recruiting databases. Sometimes they reach out, sometimes they won't. But like it was just like, especially early on in the process, it was just such a cool feeling when like a coach would reach back out and respond. And like that like ties back to the momentum thing I was talking about earlier. Like use those little responses as like victories that you're getting closer to that goal you want to have. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, like I do not know a number of emails I sent out, but it was between junior and senior year was like a ridiculous amount.
Yeah. How often would you say that you reached out via email or Twitter or social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I think it was school to school. Like school I was really interested in and near the top of my list. If they weren't responding, obviously don't like keep texting them to a point where it's like ridiculous. But like every 2 weeks, maybe I'd send a little thing because I still don't know why coaches do this, but like sometimes like they wouldn't respond for 4 months or like 2 months, and I've sent maybe like 5 messages in that time. Then all of a sudden they would respond to me like recapping like everything I'd sent, and I was like, I don't know what happened in that 4 month period, but at least they are reading it. So
Yeah.
sometimes like sending multiple message is good. Like maybe sometimes they're just really busy, they can't get to it, but that doesn't mean they forgot about you. So that schools you like, definitely do repeatedly message them. Don't be redundant, but repeatedly message them new stuff that's necessary. And then I would say any big things that happened, like for me, like when I got OC Player of the Week or when I had like that record breaking game, I did send a text to all the schools I like. But the schools that you're kind of just like emailing where you would, if they emailed you back, you would start to build a relationship, but you're not necessarily super interested. I wouldn't like keep emailing all those schools. So just be same thing as everything. Be intentional with what you're doing and have a plan on why you're doing it and like the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I think one thing that really turns coaches off, and it definitely turns me off, is when a kid sends me a message, whether it's on Twitter, social media, or even an email, and it's clearly a carbon copy, is that what we call
Yeah.
it, BCC, where
Yeah.
it's like, "Hi, coach. It's basically AI, and especially when they're a junior and all that. First of all, if you're a junior, you got to understand it's like when you're reaching out and you're sending these emails and stuff, it's like we're not recruiting guys at that point. I mean, we are, but we aren't. We're going to put you in a database, whatever. But like, you got to give me something other than just. I know you're reaching out to other coach. If this is just one mass email,
Yeah.
I mean, try to make the coach feel like he's the. So you're going on a prom date, or you want to, find a date to go to prom. You personalize the thing as best as you can, to where it doesn't seem like, oh, he already asked somebody else. Now I'm his fallback,
Yeah.
So I get a kick out of that, because we're like, you know what, poof, that's just kind of a silly thing. But and you were saying that you send out thousands of emails. I think emails are good. It's kind of, you almost want to treat it as like a newsletter. And you know what a newsletter is. You only send it out every couple of months, just saying what's an update. Sure. And it's personalized, but it's just kind of give you an update of what's going on with you. You always want to put your emails, or not your email, but your highlights and stuff like that on there. And
emails were tougher for sure. I feel like I didn't get as much success with emails. I think DMs were definitely just more personal, and it was easier to communicate. And then the biggest step is like, if you're able to get that phone number and they're able to give you your phone number, reach out, then I think is when you really start getting close to coaches.
Yeah. What would you say is more impactful? Would you say sending out thousands of emails is more impactful, or going to a camp?
I think the camp is just so, like, kind of risky, because I mean, I've had, like, especially junior year, I went out to a camp and it's like I didn't play my best, and I just felt like that school crossed me off the list, and you had to be ready for that. So it's like, if you go to a camp, you're really risking, like, especially early on, you're really risking like them building this whole profile of you that maybe isn't really who you are. The email is a lot more controlled. So the email is probably like, the camp is high risk, high reward. Because if you ball at a camp, even at an early age, you're on their radar. They're going to remember you. But the email is like, there's such an easy chance they just scroll right past it. So like, if you really want to get in their face and make them remember you, I'd say probably the camp. But the email's not a bad thing either, especially if you have good film. The email could be very, very important.
We always want to do them all. But there's the email. I run into these gurus out there that's their big thing. Come and work with me, and we're going to get you more interest, and we're going to do it through the email process.
Yeah.
And we're going to, get that thing going. So I always,
it's tough.
I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on emails. I think emails are good. But what is an email? I mean, you're talking about questionnaires. I mean, a questionnaire, when you fill it out, it goes to these coaches, and that's an email in itself. So I think those are the better emails, honestly, because questionnaires, they ask for certain things.
And they get what they want.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have everything that they want, 100%. And I'll tell you this, we're talking about this before the show got started. All JCs, under those coaches' profiles, they'll have a link, and it's usually to a questionnaire. And they will check those questionnaires 100%, because you do not know with this portal what's going on. So that time period, guys are in and out of these programs, beyond. And so let's dive into that. So we'll move into this last phase of the podcast, but we'll talk about moving. So now you're in season, out of season, first signing date, past that, we're kind of in between. Those coaches, if you go on there, if you think, well, it's not working out for me, it's kind of late in the game, you're one of those kids, go and fill out a questionnaire. I promise you, fill out a questionnaire, and then just start reaching out to these coaches on social media. Social media is kind of the get rich quick kind of a scheme, right? Because it's right then and there for them. It's not the long form. It's not right. So fill out questionnaires. Coaches will check out those questionnaires. All these JCs, all these lower level schools have them. I shouldn't just say JC, but all lower level schools. And they're always looking for guys. And here's why. because most of those schools are in areas that don't have a lot of money, don't have a big population, and there's opportunities out there, whether it's Iowa, whether it's Oregon, where I'm from, Washington, all these different areas. They're constantly looking for coaches or for recruits. And those coaches are always looking for players to excuse me, so that those coaches can move up in their position. They don't want to stay at those schools. Got news for you guys. If you're going to a school based on a coach, it's a bad idea. You're going there because you want to get the education, you want to keep playing. But they're looking to increase their position in this whole game of being a coach. So that's one thing you guys got to pay attention to. But fill out questionnaires. Try to do your best to build relationships. If you do go to those camps, if you're at a small area, whatever, find the camps that are closest. They're only about $20 to $50, whatever's closest. I don't care, because those are the coaches that are going to hang around, right? Yeah. The bigger schools, they're going to be competing for the top 2 or 3 dogs out there, right? But with the portal, there's a lot of things that go on, and there's different time periods where kids are going to either quit. Here's another. So we're talking about maybe moving into that springtime, like right now. So as we're running this podcast, we're in May, right? You're going to have a situation where coaches at the next level have exit meetings. If they're ready to cut guys loose, they'll cut you loose in the spring. And guess what happens? They got to fill that in. So then, they're going to go through the database. They're going to have meetings. They're going to try to bring guys in. So you can't say, well, it's too late in the game, because nowadays it's not. Boom, this guy's in the portal. I think the portal, when I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, and he was giving me numbers of guys in the portal. There was just 2 years ago, there was 1,500 quarterbacks in the portal. That's not, dude, like, come on. Like there's guys out there, but they're going to be, when these coaches get rid of a kid, say it's in academics, say it's just anything off the field, or they just don't want you there anymore. You have a time period, man. When you come on campus, they want freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, boom, you're out. They want progression. If you don't get a progression, boom, you're out of there. So anyway, my rant is that when we get into the winter and then we go into spring, kids think it's too late. When did you decide, hey, I'm going to go and play officially? I'm going to commit. I'm going to go to Washington.
So in about August, my coach told me to just commit, because why not? Like, you're just verbally committing. Like, if you see it all the time, kids uncommit. Like, if you uncommit, like, you're not signing a paper, nothing really happens to you. Like, obviously you might burn the bridge with that coach, but if you uncommit, there's a reason you're uncommitting. So I committed verbally. I called the head coach back in August, and I was like, I commit, because I didn't want to lose an opportunity. I didn't want them to move on to the next kid, because obviously they had to make a decision. While they didn't give me a deadline, I didn't want to risk it. And me and my coach talked it over that was for the best. But I didn't publicly commit on social media, because I didn't want to turn other coaches off, because I still kind of had an active recruitment process and wanted to see what happened out of my senior year. So I played my senior year, kept sending emails, kept talking to coaches. Year ended. I waited till about like Christmas time, and then that's kind of when I was like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with the school. I love WashU. I love the campus. Love the team. So I actually committed on social media, and like from there it was pretty much done. Then I signed my letter after that, and it was pretty much a wrap from there.
Yeah.
But I know a ton of kids around the area who've like, also from the All-Star game, like they're committing. Like, I just saw a kid commit today, literally. So it's like this process is it just keeps going. Like, I was talking to a kid during the game. He's like, I don't think I'm going to end up playing in college. Like, I think I'm just going to go to college as a normal kid. And then like a few days ago, I saw he committed to Chapman. So it's like, it keeps on going. Like, it keeps changing. You never know what's going to come out of it.
Well, and I mentioned just a minute ago, because obviously I'm going to be a little bit more biased towards the JUCO route, but it's a lot of kids don't understand it. Jason Pierre-Paul, Hollywood Brown, Aaron Rodgers, all these guys, they're in the same position as a lot of you guys. D3, it's not working out. I just can't afford it, whatever the question may be. And it's like late in the game, JUCOs, they have about 100, 110 guys on their rosters, and you got to think about 50% are going to be gone every recruiting cycle. So they got to constantly rebuild those, whether you're in California, whether you're out in Alabama or wherever. So it's important that guys got to understand their options going on later into this whole recruiting process, because when I talked to Coach Moose up at Ventura, he's coached NFL on every level. He was talking about the right fit. So if you're in a situation where in your gut, you're like, it's late, the D3 schools want me to commit, but I don't feel comfortable because financially I can't do it. I'm not getting all the, the grants, the whatever it is. You got to really think about, if you still want to keep playing, what's the right fit for you? And we're late in the game, so let's be realistic about this. And I got news for you. You go to some of these JCs, Golden West, or, here out in San Diego, there's some dogs, man.
Yeah,
and you're going to run into it, and you're going to be like, this guy, he's bouncing back from where? So you're in a situation where it's a grind. Yeah. I get it. But it also is a situation where you might be able to just take a deep breath and say, listen, let's get our academics right. If that was the situation, why you didn't go, or, let's develop. We have a lot of kids that end up going from being just a, let's say a 5'10", 175 pound running back. All of a sudden now he's 6'2". And that, there's a lot of development that can happen within that time frame. And you got signing date 1, signing date 2. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden your life, everything is over and you should quit. And we have a lot of guys that do that. And I guess now I'm kind of on a speech of just trying to motivate you as the viewer to say, listen, just keep going with it, because there's opportunities. Now, final thing with that is May, June, I think it was June. I went to Utah State, played at Utah State. We had a kid that was a defensive end that was still on the radar of guys, still on the big board. These coaches are constantly recruiting because they don't know what's going to happen with the portal. Shout out Rock Gonzalez, great kid. Was almost ready to just hang it up, say I'm done. This is after 2 years at a JC. Gets a call late May, so we're May 5th. So beyond this, from Utah State, and they said, listen, we've got an opportunity if you want to take it. The only thing is, you only have about 2 or 3 weeks. You got to be out here. He was ready to go. Boom, he gets that opportunity. So what would be your advice for some young student athletes that are kind of like, you know what, it's over?
It's only over if you decide internally that it's over, and you shouldn't. If you love the sport, you have every right to keep playing and keep fighting for a spot. Even if you don't go the JUCO route, you decide to go to a normal school, what's stopping you from training hard all summer and trying to walk on? There's so many opportunities, and you never know what's going to change, especially like you said with the portal, which has just completely changed the landscape of college football. There will always be opportunities if you want it. It's just the matter of staying motivated, staying focused, and being okay to fight the adversity, because there's not a single person who has made it to college football that didn't have to go through some sort of adversity. Well, obviously, some people have gone through a lot more than others, and all in different fashions. Everyone's gone through adversity. So you have to be ready to face it, and the way you respond to it is just by working hard, and that's what it comes down to, hard work.
Yeah. All right, Daniel, listen, before I land the plane here, I got to ask you some questions. Some people call it the hot seat. Some people call it, rapid fire, whatever it is. So now you're from Orange County.
Yes, sir.
So have you ever been to San Diego?
I have. We actually had a game. We had a game down there. We played Foothills Christian as a small school. You know them? Yeah.
Yeah. So who has better food? Let's just all my Mexican friends, they drive me crazy. I always ask this question because it's always this LA versus San Diego battle. So who has better food overall? Would you say Orange County / LA, which that's kind of fighting words in itself, versus San Diego? You would think.
Dude, this is actually a really funny story. We had in 4 years of football, we had the greatest pregame meal ever in San Diego. We went to this random hole in the wall restaurant. I couldn't tell you what it was called, but it was amazing food. So based off of that experience, if that's a little taste of what San Diego is, because that's like the only meal I've had. I'd have to go with San Diego, but I love Orange County too, so it's tough. Oh, that was a crazy, like, you can ask my teammates. That was a crazy experience.
Yeah. What's your favorite off the field activity to do?
I mean, honestly, ironically, I told you, or I mentioned a little bit early on in the podcast, but I coach flag football. I really love doing that. Like, see, we're actually like, we just finished the regular season on Friday, but getting ready for the playoffs. But I love doing that for sure because I do want to end up after football is done. I want to stay around football and I want to work in football. So I don't know necessarily if that's coaching or front office, but I definitely want to stay around football my whole life. So this is a little taste. I love it for sure.
What are you going to miss most about high school?
Oh, I mean, just coming home every day. Like, it's just so chill being able to come home to your house, like, have cooked meals, chill with your family, be close to your friends. It's just definitely coming home every night.
Yeah. What are you most nervous about going into college?
I mean, I've never been like a huge travel guy because I'm pretty like schedule oriented. Like, I like having like everything I usually do near me. So I think just kind of getting that schedule and getting like my footing. But also it's tough because football, as everyone knows, is like as soon you get to campus early and like you hit the ground running, like you're practicing right away, your meetings right away. So like being able to like find a schedule that works for me while also like performing in practice. Because like I said, I want to play as soon as possible.
Who's your best mentor?
Yeah, definitely my parents for sure. I mean, I know it's a generic answer, but like parents, and then I'd say there's definitely a few coaches and teachers who've like definitely touched like had a lot lasting positive impact on me.
If you could do it again, what would you do differently?
That's a really good question because I mean I didn't talk about it a lot, but I mean I didn't talk about it at all. But after my junior season, I had like basically like every not the Modern Days or Bosco's, but apart from those two schools, I basically had every high school asking if I wanted to transfer to play my senior year with them. So like I always think like I don't know if leaving would have been the best option, but I think because of my friends, coaches, I think I'm really happy I stayed. Like I had a really positive group of friends, social circle, and a really positive coaching staff and team. So I think honestly, I'd say the same. I was pretty happy. I mean, like, not that I didn't work hard, but you can always work harder. So I'd say just do more, one more rep, whatever.
What was the biggest distraction in high school for you? Like either like a girlfriend or a bad friend?
Yeah, that's a good question. Biggest distraction.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, it's always tough just seeing everyone around you, like, because obviously, like I said, being committed to the college football process, like, you're dedicating your whole life to it. And I think people just ask a lot of questions like why you gotta go to bed so early? Like, why do you gotta wake up? Because why you gotta leave so early from this party? Why you gotta leave so early from hanging out? Like, they don't understand, like you might have a 6 a.m. workout the next day. You might gotta be up early, or maybe you just need the sleep to recover. Like, so I think just people not really understanding what you're going through. Not saying I didn't have a good support system because I'm really grateful for what I had. But I think sometimes people just don't understand what you're going through. So I think that was kind of hard and distracting when people always didn't understand.
Beach or mountains?
Oh, beach for sure. Like 100%. I've never been like a mountain guy. I love the beach. You can do everything at the beach from working out, chilling, eating, surfing. Definitely beach.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have two younger sisters, and yeah, that's the one I coach my youngest sister in flag, and then she's in 6th grade, and then my other one's a sophomore at the same school as me.
If I was to ask your parents, would they have a favorite?
I don't know. Right now, maybe because I'm into college and they're not, so maybe, but I don't know. They're pretty equal.
Yeah. Well, right on, man. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think everything that you've dug into today is such a personalized situation. And I say personalized because I look at you the same that I would look with a lot of these other kids that are coming through that process because you're living it currently. And that's such an important factor when it comes to this whole thing. I can talk to all these different people that have gone through it and they're in their 30s, 40s, you know, the coaches, all this stuff. But it's important that you have, you know, somebody that's boots on the ground, somebody that actually is in it right here, right now. And it's so impactful. And you don't realize yet how impactful this is going to be and how many young student athletes are going to see it. And they will probably end up reaching out to you. And what I want to do is as we get going here, I definitely want to have you back on, especially, you know, maybe after the season, you know, you have that first season or your first week or anything like that. So is that your mom right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm excited for you, man. I know other people that are going to watch this are super excited for you. And I always end the podcast this way, Daniel, is, you know, understand you young student athletes. It's not about me. It's not about Daniel. It's always about you guys. And, oh, by the way, is there anything you wanted to plug?
Nah, I'm good.
Nothing?
Nothing.
All right. So listen, yeah, guys, go to the channel, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Listen, we're popping out videos every single week, ton of content throughout the entire weeks. And if you guys do have any questions on anything, obviously reach out to me, any of my previous guests. And most importantly, reach out to Daniel, man. He's definitely going to be there, be a voice for you if you guys have anything and any questions or anything like that. So listen, it's not about us. It's about you. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.